Sometimes there are those people who seem so helpless and devoid of talent that they evoke only pity. These are the ones who are afraid to move forward for fear of misfortune. Kang San was just such a person. Suddenly there was a global catastrophe known as the global connectivity phenomenon. Because of this event, unarmed citizens began to die one by one from monster attacks. 6 dead, 33 injured, and 3 missing are reported so far. Among the fatalities were parents who were on their way to the daycare center to pick up their children. Kang San lost his parents instantly. Subsequently, his property went to distant relatives he didn't even know about. Because of this kind of loss, he grew up as an orphan. When he found himself in a difficult situation, he felt powerlessness and despair. From an early age, Kang San showed a perseverance uncommon for his age. He dreamed of success while simultaneously studying and working part-time while barely sleeping. Kang San was gifted and intelligent. However, his life was devoid of luck. Before one of his exams, he had appendicitis and failed. At the next exam, the bus he was riding on overturned and he was late. There were times when his plans were disrupted by little things like a fallen bicycle blocking the entrance. These incidents continued and he was branded a loser. Kang San started hoping for a miracle when he couldn't get a job or enroll in the Hunter Academy. Awakening becomes the first step towards becoming a hunter. Those chosen by the gods have an innate talent from birth. However, if someone finds their talent in their 20s, they can still become a hunter. Kang San never stopped working on himself for this day, but his strength was not enough. In the end, his rank was the lowest rank F. The people around him watched his failure with a sneer, which completely broke his morale. Time passed, and now he is 25 years old. One day, Kang San encountered a dangerous creature. The sudden attack caught his teammate by surprise. Kang San turned around to look at this sudden incident. Kang San was in a dangerous situation when he encountered a huge wolf. The wolf lunged at him with a roar, trying to attack and overpower him. Kang San, using all his strength and agility, dodged the deadly bite. The situation escalated when the wolf, not giving up, continued its attack, trying to knock Kang San off his feet. In response, Kang San kicked the wolf with his foot, creating a powerful explosion that pushed the wolf back. From the blow, the wolf temporarily weakened and Kang San realized that he had time for his next move. Turning around, Kang San shouted out to someone for help, urging them to use magic faster. In the midst of the battle, one of the fighters in Kang San's group began to use another as a shield in an attempt to buy time. As he held the defender back, his mood fluctuated between frustration and determination. Kang San, meanwhile, was showing noticeable frustration over the situation and his weakness at this critical moment. The situation worsened when it became clear that the mage on their team was not fulfilling his responsibility to support the group in battle. The fighters expressed their frustration and disappointment at their inability to act effectively in the absence of magical support. One of the defenders was seriously injured, breaking his arm, which made the situation even more difficult for the entire group. At this point, the fighter who was used as a human shield continued to withstand the attack, thinking critically about the established game strategy and the obvious gaps in teamwork. He couldn't understand why there was no magical support, and it filled him with doubts about the successful outcome of the battle. Kang San and his group encountered 2 monsters with strength and fury like wolves. Although the monsters didn't look extremely powerful, the battle was incredibly difficult for Kang San without the support of a mage and when fighting against 2 enemies at the same time. At this time, Kang San was preparing for the worst outcome, realizing the possibility of his defeat. When all seemed hopeless, the mage finally activated his power. After illuminating the battlefield area with dazzling light and magical energy, he exclaimed that he would finish off the monsters once and for all. To this, Kang San reacted with amazement and relief, seeing how the outcome of the battle seemed to have begun to change in their favor. The mage's abilities allowed him to create powerful magical arrows to attack enemy creatures. He actively used his spells to clear the battlefield of danger while Kang San and the other team members prepared for the final strike. The decisive moment of the battle came when the mage, displaying an explosion of new power, exclaimed about the final clearing of the battlefield of enemy monsters. Kang San feels a lot of bewilderment and anger at the mage who keeps directing his magic spells anywhere but at his enemies. He tries to understand why the latter doesn't use his abilities more effectively, questioning why the mage is shooting at the ground. The mage hesitantly replies that the spell is simply completed, which only adds to the problems of the current situation. At this time, one of his spells suddenly went off, and Kang San looks on in horror as the swords burst into the air. This puts him in a state of panic as he realizes the gravity of the situation. In another part of the battlefield, one of his comrades finds himself in the clutches of the enemy and lets out a desperate cry for help, which only heightens the tension. Kang San, realizing the impending danger, tries to stop the actions of one of the fighters who is about to attack the enemy. He realizes that he can't let this happen without a plan. At this time, the magician, not paying attention to the critical situation, opens a magical portal without any warning. Kang San feels that with this development, they could all die in this battle. He is utterly confused and goes to the mage to find out the reason for his actions and informs him of his fears. As the scene grows increasingly tense, the magician begins to make excuses, though it doesn't seem to be enough to calm Kang San down. Kang San realized that no one wanted to die in the clutches of monsters and said goodbye to the horrible reality that it could happen to anyone on their team. He recalled being called Meat Shield and how that title had come to symbolize his position in the group. Despite saying he was a tank, he understood the true meaning of the term. As Kang San struggled with thoughts of his fate, he felt at the peak of unhappiness. At that moment, the events around him began to unfold rapidly and he realized that he needed to act. He had a desire to escape from this dire situation and save his comrades, even though it might turn out to be his downfall. He thought about how shameful it would be if he risked his life to save someone everyone considered a meat shield. This caused him internal conflicts and doubts. However, he realized that if he managed to avoid a confrontation, he would likely lose everything. Kang San felt confusion and dread as he tried to assess the portal in front of him, fearing the fate ahead. Suddenly, it was revealed to him that he had been chosen by the god of trials and hardships, Asman. This manifested itself when Kang San encountered a mysterious character who was searching for a portal. Alarmed and discouraged, Kang San tried to understand what was going on around him. Finding himself in front of another strange-looking creature, he continued to inquire about the location of the portal. It was pointed out to him that he had to undergo hardship to erase past life karma, which deepened his anxiety. While fighting another powerful being, Kang San felt the mounting pressure of having to adapt to the unpredictable and brutal realities of his new existence. The girl landed next to the young man, creating a shockwave. Kang was in shock, not realizing what was going on. Kang San looks at his hands in fear, realizing that the situation is getting out of control. At that moment, he finds himself in the grip of a powerful beast-like creature that clutches his shoulders, preventing him from escaping. The girl with white hair watches this with a calm smile, demanding that he make the right choice. Meanwhile, another man finds himself slumped on the ground, fighting for his life. A huge beast looms over him, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth, while he holds on to the beast with his last strength, preventing it from clawing at him. A question resounds in his mind. Where did it all go wrong? A man realizes that he is already 30 and reflects on his life. His childhood was not easy. His father was an abusive alcoholic, and his mother hated him so much that she eventually ran away, leaving the boy alone. Later, even his father died suddenly in an accident, and the only person who supported him was his grandmother. Before the world changed, he was an ordinary man living a simple life. As a child, he grew up under the care of his grandmother, who took care of him despite his hardships. As the years went by, he matured, continuing to move forward despite the challenges. At some point, his life changed. He became a laborer working on a construction site, earning a living, but things went wrong when he encountered serious difficulties. The doctor told him that the treatment would cost at least 300 million won, which came as a real shock to him. The boy's grandmother came down with a rare illness. Her condition was critical. He realized that he would not be able to find such a huge amount of money for treatment unless he took the risk. In desperation, he decided to become a hunter, realizing that it was the only way to earn money. In his 20s, he took an aptitude test and learned that he had no aptitude. However, the profession of a hunter held many surprises, and he decided to continue anyway. He was willing to do anything for his family, so 6 months ago he started working in this dangerous field. Thinking back, he realized that he had made a mistake in giving in to the lure of easy money. In front of him stood a man who looked incompetent but was offering twice as much. However, it was not worth counting on anyone's help now. The monster pounced, pinning him to the ground. He wanted to run away too, but thoughts of his grandmother kept him from doing so. She couldn't survive without him, and that was his greatest fear. With all his will, he decided to fight, because there was no other way out. The beast was about to deliver a deadly bite, but the boy gritted his teeth, intent on fighting back. Determination flashed in his eyes, but the beast, on the other hand, opened its jaws, preparing to tear into its prey. The boy was still lying on the ground, his body stiff with fear as the beast's huge paw swept right over him. He froze, staring into the monster's merciless eyes, realizing that this blow could be his last. A little earlier, Kong San had found his body pierced by a blade, and blood was oozing from the wound. His mind was clouded with shock and his legs were shaking as he slowly realized what had happened. The girl with white hair looked at him with a smile, holding out her hand. She stated that he had been a blood demon in his past life. Before he could say anything, her finger touched the claws, causing him to catch his breath. She explained that this was why his current life was full of suffering. At that moment, blue streams of energy erupted around him, binding not only him but also the beast behind him. The monster roared in pain, its body beginning to glow from the destructive power of the magic. Kong San turned around in confusion, feeling the light encompassing himself. Kong San looked at his wound in astonishment as it began to heal under the influence of the mysterious energy. His mind was full of questions, and he turned to the girl, trying to understand her words. He wanted to know who he had been in his past life. A vivid image appeared before his eyes, a man with silver scythes, bringing chaos and destruction among his enemies. It was a blood demon, and that was what he had been in the past. The girl with white hair calmly, and with a slight smirk, stated that he was indeed a blood demon. Kong San could not accept such a strange revelation. He tried to protest, saying that it didn't make sense, but all he heard was that it was his personal choice to believe it or not. The girl continued, saying that until his karma was redeemed, he could never find true happiness. She explained that only by passing the tests could he be freed from the sins of his past life. According to her, in time the evil karma would be cleansed. He was made to realize that only through suffering and overcoming hardship could he change his destiny. Suddenly, the girl changed her tone, stating that it was now time to begin the first test. Kong San felt threatened, but he didn't have time to do anything. She announced that the young man should accompany the low-ranking hunter Kim Chunshik and leave this world safely. His patience broke, and he irritably declared that this plan was simply impossible. He couldn't believe that two such weak people would be able to get out alive. The girl held out her hand, showing the reward for the completed quest. The man on the ground opened his mouth wide in horror as the blade approached his face. Kong San clutched his sword and rushed forward, rushing through the corridor of the ancient temple. A few werewolves were waiting ahead of him, ready to attack. Two beast-like creatures with burning red eyes reacted to the approaching enemy. The monsters roared to attack with incredible speed, their clawed paws tearing through the air. Kong San activated his sharpening magic, creating a bright blue glow around him. The sharpness of his sword had increased significantly, and his blade was now glowing with magical energy. He continued forward, preparing to attack. The werewolves furiously rushed at Kong San, their weapons raised to strike. One of the enemies struck Kong San's shield, causing a powerful flash of sparks. The force of the blow was significant, but he was able to stay on his feet. He had to make the right decision to survive this battle. Kong San reacts instantly to the attack, dodging a punch at the last moment. Bouncing back, he instantly begins a maneuver to evade the next blow. The blade of his opponent's sword only cleaved the air without hitting him. Sensing an opportunity for a counterattack, he makes a quick leap forward. The enemies, aware of his maneuver, tense their muscles in preparation for a counterattack. The two werewolves lunge at him with a growl. He confidently fends off an attack from one of the werewolves, and then delivers an accurate counterstrike. The blade travels across the enemy's body, leaving a deep wound. But that's not all. Khan thrusts his blade into the body of the dog once more. After looking at the dog, he asks for only one thing: for this monster to die. The werewolf begins to roar in pain. After all, it's not every day you get killed. Soon the monster drops dead, and Kong San can barely stay on his feet. Kong San, breathing heavily, looks at his bloody hand, realizing that one of his enemies has already been defeated. However, the threat does not disappear. A huge beast rushes at him with its jaws open, ready to tear him apart. Panic flashes in his eyes as he realizes the weapon has been knocked out of his hands and is lying nearby, next to the body of his enemy. The thought that every challenge carries a deadly risk keeps him from relaxing. He realizes that he has no choice and must fight to the end. He clutches the hilt of his dagger with his last strength, feeling the blood trickle down his fingers, but the pain doesn't stop him from moving on. With fury in his eyes, he rushes forward, deciding to fight the remaining enemy face to face. The monster wastes no time and delivers a powerful blow that Kang Sen struggles to block using both his dagger and shield. The blade whizzes through the air, and the beast lets out a death roar as Kang Sen strikes. A splash of blood stains the floor beneath him, and Kang Sen himself, breathing heavily, remains in place, clutching his weapon tightly. However, the tension doesn't subside. He senses that this isn't the end, and prepares for the next blow. The dagger slams into the monster's body with force, tearing its flesh and blood spurts in all directions. Kang Sen breathed heavily, resting his head against the lifeless body of his defeated foe. Sweat drips down his face, his breathing is hitched, but he can't let himself relax. His gaze is directed forward, where the next challenge awaits him. He raises his hand and touches the weapon. Stepping forward, he notices that the dagger he just used is starting to emit a strange blue glow. Tension appears in his eyes, but there is no time to think. His hand automatically throws the dagger at the monster. The dagger rushes forward with great speed and then pierces the head of the huge beast, fracturing its skull and blood flying apart. Kang Sen slowly straightens up as he watches another opponent fall to his knees. His strength is almost gone, but he realizes it's over. Kang Sen was lying on the ground, tired after a difficult test. He was informed that he had successfully passed the first difficult test. Information was given that he would be given the promised award. Kang Sen heard the confirmation again that he had passed the first test and should receive the reward. Someone was persistently trying to wake him up, repeating for him to wake up. Kang Sen noisily opened his eyes, still in mild shock. A girl stood in front of him, demanding that he get up immediately. Kang Sen, shocked, jumped up and assured that he was already awake. The girl handed him the award as promised, noting the importance of the moment. Kang Sen wondered why the award was in paper form, which made her displeased. The girl, with a mysterious expression, continued to watch him. Kang Sen studies the information on the holographic screen that shows the award. He is surprised and interested. The girl watching the screen expresses hope that the world has changed for the better. She looks confident and optimistic. The girl explains to Kang Sen that he hasn't passed all the tests yet. However, he was given a reward for destroying all the tools. She smiles and bids him farewell, advising him not to pass out so easily next time. Kang Sen is delighted with the award he received. He feels excitement and anticipation. He examines the award with surprise and ponders its significance. He still doesn't fully understand its potential. The reward gives Kang Sen a new skill, Guardian's Will. This skill increases defense and stamina, and can also evolve. Guardian's Will increases defense and restores stamina. The skill provides significant advantages in combat. As it turns out, most of them only have 1 star. This emphasizes the rarity of Kang Sen's ability. Kang Sen reflects on the fact that skills with 2 or more stars are only available to hunters of rank D and above. He realizes that for higher skills, not only technique but also luck is important. Kang Sen is thrilled to receive the award and can't contain his emotions. He thinks it was worth the risk. Suddenly, he is startled when he notices something. His surprise is expressed on his face. The girl reminds Kang Sen that the ordeal is not over yet. Kang Sen ponders her words, trying to understand their meaning. The new task for Kang Sen is to rescue Kim Chun-shik and get out safely. He discovers Kim's body and screams his name in despair. Kang Sen feels guilt and anxiety as he checks on Kim's condition. He fears that he has fainted from excitement. Kang Sen realizes that Kim's wounds are very serious and he is losing a lot of blood. He panics that Kim may not make it to the hospital. It occurs to him why the girl gave him a special gift. He begins to realize its purpose. Kim Chun-shik is lucky as Kang Sen now knows how to help him. He feels confident in his actions. The expression in Kang Sen's eyes shows his determination and concentration. He is determined to save his friend. Kang Sen uses his powers to help Kim. The powers flow through both of them, creating glowing streams of energy around them. Kim's body began to gradually recover, and Kang Sen was very happy about it. After a while, someone was walking to the office of the Hunter Department. It was the same mage who had abandoned his team. He was annoyed at being called into the office. Walking into the office, the mage wondered why they had summoned him. In any case, he wanted to deal with it quickly. The department employee asked the mage, "Is he Moon Sungmin?" He wanted to know what had happened in the raid a few days ago. Kang Sen glared at Sungmin, and the mage was extremely displeased that this devil dared to turn him in. The staff asked the magician to sit down for a moment. But at the same second, Moon Sung-min ran out the door and the staff ran after him. The mage started to run with all speed, but he was abruptly grabbed by his clothes. The staff member pinned the mage down and stated that Mr. Moon Sung-min had run away and left his comrades behind in the F-rank raid. Moon Sung was captured and was reminded that willfully leading comrades to their deaths is considered a serious offense. He asked if there was evidence that he deliberately abandoned his comrades, claiming that he retreated because there was no chance of victory. The mage was immobilized by a guard who was using some sort of technology. He was shown a video of the incident that showed 2 F-rank tanks and 1 mage confronting 4 trolls. The recording showed that as soon as the magician spell was activated, Moon Sung-min immediately ran away, which was seen as proof of his guilt. Moon Sung-min was surprised that all of this was recorded and wondered about the nature of those behind it all. Kong-san stood in the hallway, watching from the sidelines. He hardly moved at all, remaining in his seat. One of the guards said that thanks to the recording, they could bring Moon Sung to trial and noted that Kong-san was in a difficult situation but was well prepared. The guard explained that there are many reports of premeditated murders on their world, but due to lack of evidence, most of the perpetrators escape punishment. Kong-san revealed that he always records everything in case of emergencies, having spent a considerable amount of money on the camera. In this world, it is difficult to prevent premeditated murder, and so people tend to understand their adversaries in advance, preparing for the worst. When the fire arrow lit up, Moon Sung-min lost his composure and, frightened, chose to run away to survive alone. He considered sacrificial pawns an inevitable part of the game and believed that the lives of his comrades were a fair price to pay for his salvation. The officer remarked after watching the tape that with Kong-san's physical abilities, he should have joined the army. The officer explained that in the army, Kong-san would get specialized weapons and improved living conditions, but Kong-san noticed that the weapons were ineffective against monsters with thick skin. Kong-san admitted that he often finds himself in difficult situations, and being unprepared for the unexpected in this dangerous world is a serious problem. He expressed his desire to become stronger as a hunter. Outside, stretching, Kong-san hoped his opponent wouldn't last 10 years. At that moment, in passing, he caught the stranger's eye. The man anxiously wonders if Kong-san is really in front of him. His voice is full of surprise and tension when he says the name. Kong-san also looks stunned and hesitantly confirms his identity. Kneeling before Kong-san, the man passionately hails him as his savior. The story is moved back a few days to show how events unfolded. At the hospital, Kim regains consciousness and realizes that he is still alive. His astonished eyes speak of this unexpected discovery. Suddenly, the focus shifts to the battle scene with the huge creature. The moment when the werewolf fell at the hands of Kong-san. Kim Chun-shik was breathing heavily, lying on the ground, exhausted and shaken. After the battle, Kong-san also tries to recover by recovering his breath. While in the hospital, the man realizes that Kong-san is his savior. He is amazed and begins to ponder how this happened. His mind goes back to his ordeal and tries to find answers. He remembers how the mage escaped, leaving him in a dangerous situation. Questions of salvation begin to plague his soul. Kim Chun-shik ponders not only how he was saved, but why. Suddenly, the man's attention is caught by someone else calling his name. Kim Chun-shik meets his grandmother in the hospital and exclaims with surprise and joy as he turns to her. His grandmother, who is in a wheelchair, lovingly rebukes him, calling him a varmint. His grandmother expresses concern for Kong-san and reproaches him for his involvement in dangerous affairs. She thinks that because of his actions, they may go to the next world together. The elderly woman shares her worries about her grandchild's old age and neglect. Kong-san reassures his grandmother, warning her about the dangers of high blood pressure due to worry. He claims that he's fine, though Grandma clearly disagrees. She emphasizes that his face is badly hurt, and this makes her anxious. The grandmother expresses her willingness to face death calmly, wondering why Kim would take such a risk. He replies that he didn't do it for himself, but for their future together. Kim Chun-shik feels a deep love for his grandmother. In the memoir, the grandmother refers to Kim Chun-shik as her child when he was still a toddler. Memories continue to stir up emotions as she thinks about their life together. Little Kim hugs her, promising to be together for a long time. This scene reinforces their close bond and family ties. In the present tense, the grandmother begs Kong-san not to die. These words are filled with anxiety and a plea for life to continue. Kim Chun-shik expresses his gratitude and appreciation to his grandmother by hugging her. He feels deeply grateful for her support and love. By the time he returns to the present, the man welcomes Kang Sen back as his savior. He feels an overwhelming desire to express his gratitude. Kang Sen explains that he helped others out of his own desire. He believes that, in this world, the only people who can really help are his comrades. Ignoring his comrades and walking away to him means condemning them to death. The guilt of this makes him incapable of staying away. Kang San was taken aback by Kim Chun-shik's behavior, apparently expecting some sort of drastic action from him. Both of them squatted down and began to discuss their doubts. Kang San admitted that he had his own worries. He asked Kim Chun-shik not to look at him with such glowing hope as it embarrassed him. Kang San thought about how it was hard to explain what was happening as a quest and that he had no other choice. Kang San reflected that he was unlikely to face Kim Chun-shik again, and was about to leave. As he said goodbye, Kang San smiled, assuring that everything was fine despite what was going on. Suddenly, an inscription appeared, informing Kang San of his second trial and the hardships that had been given to him. Kang San was shocked at the suddenness of what was happening, wondering how it had happened so unexpectedly. He learned that Kim Chun-shik's grandmother suffers from a rare disease and cannot afford surgery due to lack of money. The quest dictated to donate money to help Kim Chun-shik and his grandmother, offering a reward in the form of improved abilities. Kang San was completely bewildered by the situation suddenly requiring him to make a serious decision. Kang San was tasked with donating 150 million won to Kim Chun-shik's grandmother to pay for her surgery. In return, he was promised an increase in agility and divinity, as well as a new ability. Kang San checked his account balance and saw that he had 168 million won, which made him think about his upcoming transfer. Barely remembering how hard he had worked since childhood, Kang San was confused at the thought of parting with his accumulated funds. He realized that 168 million won was all of his wealth that he had worked for all his life. Thinking over the situation, Kang San was in quiet contemplation, unsure of how to proceed. He remembered the possibility of living the life he wanted if he erased the karma of the past. There was also a warning that once he became an apostle, he would not be able to go back. Ignoring the quest would result in the loss of all rewards and severe karma degradation. If it fails, it faces an unenviable fate, including an unknown agonizing death or existence in a vegetative state. Kang San objected that it was too much for him. However, he realized that by accepting the role of an apostle, he had no choice. Kang San pondered that he would receive 6 stat points and 1 ability for completing the task. However, there would be no additional rewards this time around. The main importance is that failure will result in the loss of the opportunity to pass the third test. The hunter's power level guarantees vast riches, allowing him to move forward. Kang San decided to develop his skills as a hunter. He hoped to easily recover the amount he had spent and get a new ability, which was not a bad deal. Kang San stared at the billboard, pondering the efforts ahead. With a confident look, he decided to get his reward and sprang into action. He contacted the administration to begin the assignment. Soon the message came that he had successfully passed the second test. He was promised to be given the awards he deserved. At this time, the selection of applicants numbered 31 through 40 occurred. People gathered in front of the speaker, ready for new challenges. Preparation for the test has begun and participants have been warned that they will be able to control a certain character in the virtual space. As they enter the virtual reality room, they will be able to control their avatar. The purpose of the test was to perform tasks based on the position and character of each participant. Complaints about the assigned roles would not be accepted, which emphasized the importance of individual responsibility. It was explained that the characters were set up to test skills appropriate to each participant's rank. If they failed, the responsibility was placed on the lack of skill, not on their character's shortcomings. Kang San was announced as participant number 38. He had to take part in the challenge by demonstrating his skills and abilities. He claimed the position of a tank and stepped forward confidently. This implied that his role was to protect and hold off his opponents. Kanu-san was tasked with stopping the attack of the 4 beasts and protecting his allies. The battle was supposed to last about 5 minutes. He was given the opportunity to request a sword and shield as equipment. His character traits were fixed at level 30, which determined his combat abilities. Kanu-sanu was wished good luck for the upcoming challenge. Prepared and determined, he was ready to face his enemies. Threats appeared before him in the form of beasts that roared and prepared to attack. The task required immediate reaction and strategic action from the protagonist. As a reward for successfully completing the trial, Kana-san's combat stats were to increase by 2 units each. These improvements could greatly help him in further trials. Kong-san recalls how he once had to overcome many obstacles to raise his characteristics from their initial values. Despite his efforts, he only now sees that one of his characteristics has reached 30. He is satisfied that at last the goal he has long sought has been achieved. Kong-san demonstrates his shield mastery with the Guardian Shield skill. This is a basic tank skill that he has acquired. Seeing the approaching beasts in front of him, he wonders if he can test his new reward here. It's up to him to see if the improvements will help him in battle. The beasts rush to attack, but Kong-san is ready for it. He bravely rises up, defending himself with his shield. Kong-san encounters a huge beast and rushes to attack using his skills. He strides forward with determination as he tries to deal with the threat. The beast in front of him looks threatening, but Kong-san doesn't back down. His determination is striking, showing his willingness to fight. Forced to retreat, Kong-san assesses the situation. He keeps a close eye on his opponent, preparing for his next move. With sword and shield in hand, Kong-san reflects the blows without retreating before the enemy. Kana-san's test characteristics were set at level 30. His abilities and reaction speed were superior to what he had in real life. Kong-san realized that he was stronger than ever before. This realization gave him confidence. The control room was watching Kong-san's actions. The people watching looked focused and satisfied. The commentator noted that despite the low rating, Kong-san excelled in handling situations. Among all the candidates, he stood out as the most exceptional. Kong-san demonstrated his skills in a battle with his opponent. His skill level made observers wonder about his potential. One of the observers continued to keep a close eye on Kong-san. His confident demeanor attracted attention. Kong-san fought several beasts at the same time. Despite their numerical superiority, he remained focused and confidently held his defenses. One of the beasts growled threateningly at Kong-san. Kong-san saw the enemies and decided to attack immediately. He was ready to use his skills to the fullest. Using his sword and shield, Kong-san entered the duel with the huge entities. His determination and power were at an all-time high, and he was determined to win at all costs. A young woman notices one of the monsters heading towards the allies. Her concern grows. She reflects on the purpose of the test, which is to show how well the participant is doing in their role. She worries that it is important to remember the allies on the home front and wonders if the participant has noticed this. 3 figures are preparing to stop an approaching beast. Their task is to defend against it. Kong-san stands in front of the 3 monsters. He activates the defense shield skill. A huge monster growls, preparing to attack. It's fearsome in its appearance. Kong-san engages the monster, fending off its attack with his shield and sword. The battle reaches a peak of tension. Observers notice what is happening and look surprised. Kong-san uses his skill to divert the monster's attention away from his allies. He needs to fulfill the role of a tank. In the process of fighting, Kong-san realizes his responsibilities to the team. He is obligated to sacrifice himself for others. Kong-san understands that the role of the tank is to protect allies on the front lines. He recognizes the risk and high demands of his position. It is recognized that the skills of a tank can bring in huge profits. Because of this, many used to aspire to become tanks, but the complexity of the profession makes it undesirable. Kong-san makes his decision based on the maxim, high risk, high reward. He thinks it suits him. Kong-san realizes that the path he has chosen is completely in line with his nature. He has no intention of changing. Kong-san prefers not to take risks for small things. He acts in his own style, relying on his own principles. The exam is officially over. Kong-san prepares for the possibility of post-exam events. After the exam, the young man is nervous and analyzes his condition. He is full of tension and expectation. Kong-san decides that he needs to increase his rank first. His current status makes it difficult for him to participate in more difficult raids. To grow, Kong-san's goal is to get rid of the label of F-rank meat shield. He needs to prove his true strength. People gather around the young man, many of whom look interested. They watch him with curiosity. Kong-san notices the reaction of the people around him, so he turns around to see what happened. Kong-san has achieved the maximum grade of S+. Elsewhere, a new crowd of people turned out. A wide variety of personalities seemed to have gathered among the crowd, each immersed in their own thoughts. On one of the tables, someone was contemptuously looking at the spoiled examination papers. There were visible inscriptions indicating complete dissatisfaction with the results. This person was frustrated, believing that the exam participants could not even pass the basic aptitude tests. He talked about how they did not know their own limitations. He wondered what these candidates were thinking when they applied for rank advancement. The mere thought that the battlefield was no joke never left his mind. An image of a disturbed scene involving a menacing entity and people lost in suspense rushed into his memory. One's attention was drawn to the S-rank score in the evaluation report of a candidate whose name was Kong San. The report noted that Kong San displayed perfect qualities as a tank. He held his position for 5 minutes without a single mistake. He performed well in the scenario of defending an imaginary ally, drawing the monster's attention to himself, showing optimal effectiveness in the base test. The team leader was in the office when he was told it was time to go to the test site. He readily agreed. The participants were divided into teams of 5. They had to pass the practical test in 2 groups. When the test starts, they will be sent to the E-rank area. Passing will require clearing the area of all monsters, just like in a real raid. Those who fulfill the minimum requirements will have to show performance skills that match E-rank hunters. Only they will be able to continue onward. Since the participants of the first round took different exams, they had no opportunity to learn about each other in advance. This made it difficult to form teams. The ability to properly form a team for a raid was considered an important skill for hunters. The evaluation started immediately after the teams were formed. Min Hyunmo was appointed as the leader of the first team. He stepped forward with confidence. Jo Hanbul was appointed leader of the second team. He was nervous, realizing his responsibility. Then we drew lots to determine who would choose the team members first. We used the game rock, paper, scissors. Min Hyunmo won and began selecting contestants for his team. He scrutinized those present, choosing someone first. Min Hyunmo determined that their team needed a tank. He knew that a reliable front line would make the raid easier. He indicated that they would work together with the person of their choice. His choice was made confidently and decisively. Now it was Jo Hanbul's turn to make the choice. He was a little nervous, but accepted the task. Jo remembered that there were 2 applicants for the tank position. He was intrigued as to which of them was the other candidate. Kong San stood in front of him, waiting to be assigned to the team. Jo looked at him carefully. Jo doubted whether Kong San was really a tank, for he seemed rather thin. Thoughts of his competence never left him. Despite his doubts, Jo decided to choose Kong San for his team. He reasoned that having someone who could at least impersonate a tank was better than not having one. The teams were finalized and further selection began. Min Hyunmo's selection was to be as follows. The examiner announced that they were now a team. Teamwork was to be strengthened between the participants. He warned that in a practice test, no one would be immune. One moment of carelessness could cost lives, so it was important to use the 30-minute strategy meeting wisely. The examiner arranges to meet in 30 minutes, preparing for the upcoming event. One team is confident in their abilities as they have a strong defender, and they make choices they think are good. Participants discuss strategy, emphasizing the importance of sticking to their roles and standard tactics. They decide to start by discussing their strengths. Another group, dressed in yellow uniforms, looks confused and tense as they ponder the situation. Kong San wondered if they should strategize as the situation required a clear plan. One of the team members agrees that they need to come up with a plan. He believes that even with ambiguities, a solution can be found by joining forces. Someone with long hair watches from above, mulling over his thoughts amidst the quiet conversation. Kong San is rated as an S+ in the rankings, but his previous results since his awakening have been poor. He has spent the last few years as an F-rated defender. Despite his good abilities, Kong San allegedly lacks the true talent of a hunter. This is unfortunate for observers. The start of the test is prepared and the first team is called to participate. In a group of fighters, everyone is preparing for battle. They are focused on the upcoming battle, keeping their weapons at the ready. The team's tank warns the others of the danger and calls for evasion. At this time, a rapid attack occurs. Min Hyunmo then instructs the team to form up. He raises his sword and prepares for organized resistance. Suddenly, an orc appears and the fighters realize the threat. The orcs rush to attack with obvious aggression. One of the fighters activates the Iron Body ability. This temporarily increases defense by 5%, helping to withstand the attack. Using the Iron Body ability, the fighter withstands a powerful blow. This allows him to continue resisting. The leader notices that there are 3 orcs in front of them. He orders the priests to reinforce and heal the tank and the rest to attack. The archer attacks decisively, aiming for the enemy, but the orc easily deflects the arrow. Despite the danger, the commander confidently leads the men into battle. He attacks the orc with all his might. Min Hyunmo throws a quick jab while looking to counter with a stiff jab. The enemy attacks with fury, trying to do some serious damage. The blonde man fends off the blow with his sword. The orc lets out a loud roar as they fight. He tries to intimidate the leader by directing his full force to attack from behind. The orc raises his weapon, preparing to deliver a powerful blow. The tank actively uses the guardian shield to protect itself from attacks. This allows it to withstand enemy pressure and ensure safety. The orc approaches with an impressive weapon, clearly intending to attack. Tension builds, and the fighter is ready for a confrontation. The tank applies his skills by holding off the orc's attack. His defense and shield actions allow him to hold back the blow. The man, gritting his teeth tensely, praises his efforts. The orc raises his weapon above him with a menacing expression. He seeks to strike a decisive blow. The tank fights hard, using a powerful shield strike against the orc. The leader looks at the situation, realizing that it is a bit more difficult than expected. However, he expects that with the support of the priests providing buffs and healing, the tank can cope. The group was moving according to plan. Min Hyunmo was confident of their success. Suddenly there was a loud growl, which puzzled the boy greatly. He realized that something wasn't going as planned. The group was attacked by a crowd of orcs with an intimidating appearance. There were far more of them than they had anticipated. Min Hyunmo was stunned by the number of enemies, 7 or 8. He realized that the previous orcs were only scouts. The leader engaged one of the orcs, but his attack was unsuccessful. He had to react quickly to the threat. Min Hyunmo urged them to retreat, pointing behind the tank to find shelter and protection. The tank took the attack of the enemies, using his shield to protect the others. The orcs were approaching threateningly. The man, despite the intense pressure, continued to stand still. He felt the weight of the situation on his shoulders. The priests urged the Atanki to hold firm and not to retreat. They knew that it was in their power to hold back the onslaught of the enemy. One of the team members notices a drone approaching. The drone flies over the field, observing what is happening. On the ground, the team is strategically lined up. There is some confusion among participants about the assignment of ranks. The ranks designated by the government do not exist for the sake of honor. A certain rank means that a person can be trusted to perform a task of the appropriate level. An E-ranked hunter must be able to handle a level E raid. The tanker is holding the defenses at the moment. His task is to protect the team from enemies. If the tanker can handle an entire army of orcs on his own, he would not pass the E-rank test, but would take on a more difficult task. To pass the practical test, all of the team's skills must meet the required level. Otherwise, the team is at risk. Min Hyunmo breathes heavily as he ponders the instructor's words about the seriousness of the situation. Everyone realizes the consequences of failure. Min Hyunmo agrees with the instructor, realizing that if the tanker gives up its position, it will end in defeat for the crew. The team joins forces to support the tankers. Min Hyunmo noted that while the orcs are focused on the front lines, they will break through from the other side and attack. Min Hyunmo engages in close combat with an orc, striking it hard. He demonstrates his bravery and fighting skills in confronting the enemy. Tanker defends the line, using his strength to repel enemy strikes. The team behind him supports him with pressure. Another member of the team fires arrows in succession. He aims at the orcs, who continue to advance in large groups. The orcs that have been hit are screaming in pain and rage. The team's allies, including the caster, prepare for the next action. They are focused and determined to support the tanker. The tank stares resolutely ahead, preparing for the final attack. The team successfully completes the mission at level E. The tank exits the challenge, exhausted but with a sense of accomplishment. The soldiers are surprised by the condition of the tank, which looks depleted and exhausted. Medics quickly approach to assist the team and the injured tank. They ask to clear a passageway to quickly assist and stabilize the situation. The team congratulates the successful completion of the task, bowing in appreciation. Min Hyunmo, standing in front, looks exhausted but is pleased with the result. Team 1 now has to go to the waiting room, The tank lying on the stretcher needs medical assistance after a strenuous battle. Team 2 is told to prepare for the next challenge and go to the gate. The participants look a little worried as they look at each other. Team Leader 2 is excited and wonders if everything will be okay. He feels the pressure of the upcoming task and responsibility. Soon, Team Number 2 comes through the portal. Joe ponders what kind of monster will show up. He realizes that their tank is weaker than the first team's, and he needs to make the best of it. He repeats to himself that he must do more for his comrades. The rest of the team is at the ready, keeping the same goal in mind. Kong-san is focused and determined. He senses the approaching danger and looks around carefully. Joe notices the enemy approaching and commands to take the formation. The orcs begin to attack and time is running out to prepare. The orc quickly approaches, preparing to attack. Joe spotted the approaching goblin and warned the others of the danger. Others in the trial also noticed the threat and became wary. One of the trial participants noticed that his foot was stuck down. The examiner watched the subjects handle the conditions without prior information because it was part of the test. The group found themselves surrounded as the goblins launched an attack. Joe and his comrade were frightened and urged the monsters not to come any closer. But the goblins continued to attack with aggression despite the pleas. Kong-san skillfully repelled the goblins' attack with his sword. The goblins retreated, letting out loud shouts, expressing their displeasure. Kong-san urged everyone to remain calm in order to successfully counter the threat. Kong-san explained that goblins, no matter how dangerous they were still just goblins. At this time, the goblins began their aggressive attack, moving towards the group with weapons in hand. Kong-san prepared for battle, holding his sword at the ready to repel the attack. One of the goblins tensed up and fired his bow, aiming at Kong-san. Kong-san realized that the goblins were attacking in an organized manner, as if they were being commanded by someone. He concluded that the battle was being watched by a hobgoblin who was directing the goblins' actions. However, Kong-san wasn't concerned as he thought his skills were enough to deal with his enemies. At the crucial moment, Kong-san's Guardian's Will ability activated, enhancing his abilities in battle. This ability increased his defense and health regeneration by 12%, depending on the number of enemies. With renewed determination, Kong-san rushed into the battle, throwing the goblins away from him. The examiner was amazed at what was happening and looked more closely at the situation. Joe noticed that Kong-san showed excellent fighting skills, which made him admire him. Joe suggested that his team also join the attack to support Kong-san. One of the contestants landed a powerful blow on the goblin, demonstrating teamwork. The other party released energy, hitting the goblin and knocking the opponent back. Due to the number of enemies, the goblin's defense abilities have decreased by 1%. This gave Kong-san an advantage despite the decrease in defense abilities. Kong-san noted the interesting nature of his new abilities that affected the course of the battle. He caught a movement among the foliage that made him wary. Kong-san reacted instantly, alerting his team to move. Kong-san launched a powerful attack using his weapon and shield. He was stunned by the developing situation and realized the seriousness of the threat. A blood orc appeared in front of Kong-san, which was unusual for such a low-level area. This appearance caused him to question the presence of such a strong opponent in a rank E area. What's going to happen next? If you want to see part 2, post the secret word, dungeon, in the comments. That way I'll know that you've seen it to the end and you want a sequel. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you later and bye-bye.